The Senate and the White House have different plans. Will this simply slow things down?
Well, to tell the Ukrainian kids in trenches in the shivering cold on the front line right now that Ukrainian aid is not urgent. What the speaker is doing is immediately injecting politics. Yeah, sure, Israel is front of mind. That's what he's saying. That's a political comment. He's injecting politics into national security. And there's been broad agreement, including with Republicans behind the scenes, even among Republicans who are not willing to say so in public, that we need to fund Ukraine, we need to fund Israel, and we need to do them together to get it through the House and the Senate. That's the urgent priority. Both wars are important for our national security.
Congressman, when it comes to Ukraine funding and Taiwan, the southern border, as well as obviously Israel, do you think as individual bills, all four of those could pass?
That's the problem, is you have these isolationist Republicans represented by the new Speaker of the House who suddenly are opposed to funding Ukraine, even though every national security expert will tell you that it's essential for our national security, that having a bulwark for NATO against Russia has been critical to our national security for 70 years, that the number one observer of what we do in Ukraine is Xi Jinping in China. And so he is making decisions about Taiwan based on how much we support Ukraine. For all these reasons, Ukraine remains essential to our national security. Of course, we want to fund Israel as well. They're our closest ally in the Middle East, and they have a right to defend themselves against this barbaric Hamas terrorist attack. But the reality with these isolationist Republicans is that we're probably not going to get their votes for Ukraine or, frankly, for Taiwan unless we pair it with Israel. And that's why if the speaker is doing the responsible thing for our national security, he'd be following the advice of Mitch McConnell and keeping these things together.
I'd like to ask you about the fight in Gaza, Congressman. A lot of our viewers know that you're a combat veteran. You served 4 tours as a Marine in Iraq, and you know about this style of urban warfare. Israel sent in more ground troops into Gaza over the weekend, of course, more this morning as well. And it's hard to tell exactly what shape this so-called next phase is going to take. But I just wonder your thoughts on what these Israeli troops are going through in door-to-door combat, knowing that Gaza sits on top of a maze of tunnels that have made this job incredibly difficult.
Joe, they're going into hell. Urban combat is brutal to begin with. And speaking as an urban combat veteran from Iraq, where we didn't have tunnels, we didn't have high buildings, 2 to 3 story buildings instead of 10-story buildings like you have in Gaza. And we had some human shields, but we didn't have a large civilian population remaining in the cities where we were conducting ground operations, at least the most intense ground operations. Israel has a really tough military task ahead of them. But of course, it's not just a military task. There has to be a political endgame for all of this, or frankly, the Israeli kids who are going to die and the Palestinian civilians who are going to die needless deaths because if Israel just goes in and kills some terrorists, but in the process kills a lot of civilians, that's not only a moral problem, that's a military problem as well. If you kill a lot of innocent civilians, you recruit more terrorists to the cause. And if you don't give everybody else, the innocents, a real vision of the future, a political future that they can buy into so they don't buy into Hamas, then we're going to be right back where we began.
Congressman, Save the Children was out with a horrific statistic today. The number of children reportedly killed in Gaza just 3 weeks in has surpassed the annual number of children killed across the world's conflict zones since 2019. Is Israel doing enough to protect civilians? Because this statistic is horrifying.
Well, I've not seen the statistic myself. It sounds absolutely horrifying. For sure, many of the statistics coming out of Gaza, of course, are from Hamas, which usually pushes out fraudulent statistics because it's a terrorist group. But obviously, if this statistic is right, it's a horrible tragedy. As a father of 2 little girls, I can't imagine losing any kids. And Israel has to be careful of this, again, not just for the moral, to maintain the moral high ground, but to maintain the military high ground as well. If they kill too many innocent people, they will, in fact, recruit more terrorists than they kill, and they will lose the long fight to eliminate this national security threat to their nation presented by the terrorist group Hamas. So, look, this is also the Israeli Defense Forces, which have been known around the world for taking extraordinary care to avoid civilian casualties in the past.